The Kerala Development Corporation Limited proposed the SilverLine project, a semi high speed railway project that envisages trains running at 200 kilometers per hour between the state's northern and southern ends. It is the single biggest development project in the state's history. Yet, protests are taking place across the state against the project.
The SilverLine project has been something that successive governments in Kerala have been talking about for almost a decade now. Um, and the project is being, um, you know, taken forward by the current LDF government of Mr. Pinarayi Vijayan. Essentially, this is a high-speed, semi-high-speed railway project connecting the state's northern end of Kasaragod to Trivandrum, which is the state capital. It runs about 530 kilometers across 11 districts, or 11 of the 14 districts, and it will have trains running at a speed of 200 kilometers per hour, and it aims to get people to travel between Kasaragod and Trivandrum in under 4 hours, as opposed to the existing 12 hours on the Indian Railway stretch. So currently, trains on the Indian Railways network take about 11 to 12 hours, which is the fastest train. But the Silver Line train can aims to do it under 4 hours. So this is the project in its most basic form. Um, so the major motive behind the implementing the project, as the government says, is to decongest the roads and highways in Kerala. This is a state which is densely populated. It is one of the most densely populated states in the country. Its roads, highways are extremely clogged. We always have traffic jams, and even if you take the rail route, because of numerous curves and bends on the existing Indian Railways network, it takes a lot of time. Yeah, it takes 11 to 12 hours for a person to travel between the two ends. So the major objective is to make commuting easier for the average citizen, for the average resident of Kerala. The other is to sort of like a boost to the state's economy. This is a massive project. This will have the corridor in different stretches. It will have elevated portions. It will have at grade portions. So the government hopes that by implementing such a huge proposal, there will be people would be sort of people would have can stay on in the state for a job. They won't be forced to leave the state because of commuting options. It will allow the industries to come in, set up their businesses here along the path of the railway corridor. It is also aimed as a sustainable sort of a project, something which runs on solar and renewable energy. So these are some of the things that the government talks about as justifying the project. So there are different the protests are happening across the state against this project. There are protests being led by mainstream political parties like Congress, the BJP, the Indian Union Muslim League. There are also citizen-centric protests. There is the Silver Line with the Janagiya Samati, which is basically an outfit which has been formed by people who would be affected by the project, people whose houses are likely to be demolished when the project comes along. This outfit is spearheading protests across the state, different parts of the state. So there are different reasons why the project is being used. One is the financial aspect of the project. This is a project which is being implemented at a cost of around 63,000 crores. But many experts say that this is not the actual cost of the project, and it could easily go over rupees 1 lakh crore or 1 lakh 20,000 crores when the project ultimately gets implemented in the next 5 years. So, how will a state which is currently debt strapped, which is finding it difficult to even pay salaries of its staff, government employees, pensions, how is the state going to fund such a project? Obviously the cost of the project is not being borne from the state budget. It is going to borrow money from external funding agencies, but ultimately the state will have to pay the money off. So how is a state which is currently struggling financially pay off such a project? Is it financially feasible? Is another question. How many people are actually going to get on this train? How many people really do want to travel between Kasaragod and Trivandrum? If somebody wants to go from Trivandrum to say Chennai or Bangalore, how is the Silver Line network going to help him? There is no interconnectivity between the existing Indian railway stretch and the Silver Line network. So a person will have to move from the Silver Line station to the Indian railway station. So questions of interoperability. There are also another major problem that people raise is the environmental aspect. This is a railway corridor which is going to cut through wetlands, paddy fields. It is going to be built through stretches of the Western Ghats. So tunnels will have to be uh, built. Uh, for a state which is currently grappling with a lot of climate change related issues, for a state which is saw back-to-back floods and landslides and all kinds of monsoon sort of related incidents. Um, how is such a state, which is quite environmentally fragile, uh, going to implement a project which is likely to leave huge environmental impact? There could be drainage issues, flow of water, flow of rivers could be affected. So I think these are some of the major issues that people and opposition political parties have with this project. So the Kerala government has begun the process of land acquisition for the project. Currently, a survey work is going on to install stones to mark the alignment or proposed route of the project. At several places, when officials go on to install these boundary stones, protests spring up. There are people opposing the project. Uh, so that process is going on. The state government has already conducted what is known as a rapid environment impact assessment, and the government is likely to carry out a social impact assessment quite soon. Um, but the final approval on the detailed project report, or the DPR as it's called, from the railway board is still awaited. So that's the big decision. Will the railway board give its nod to the DPR in its present form of the project? So only with the approval of the railway board can the state government move on to the project. So I think some of those, the state government hopes that with the budget which is likely to be presented tomorrow, there will be, the finance minister is likely to give the green signal to the Silver Line project.